All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling a topic that a lot of you have been asking about, vaping.
Yeah, it seems like it's on everyone's mind these days.
It really does. And honestly, I've got some questions myself. Is this like a miracle for smokers, or is it a big problem for young people, or what?
Well, our source material, an article called Vaping is Too Good to Be True, seems to suggest it might be somewhere in between.
Interesting title. So maybe we can sort through all that today.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first things first, what exactly is vaping?
Well, instead of smoke, we have science. Basically, imagine a liquid cocktail with things like propylene glycol and glycerol, nicotine salts, and then a whole bunch of flavorings all heated up
Okay.
until it turns into this fine mist that you inhale.
Oh, interesting. So like a cocktail you breathe. But propylene glycol and glycerol, those sound kind of intense. Are those safe?
You know, they actually are pretty common. You find them in food and cosmetics all the time, so they're considered safe to eat. But breathing them in as vapor, well, that's a whole different story, something we can definitely talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So we're talking chemicals here.
Yeah.
But not like magic potions, right?
Right.
But it does have nicotine.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question. Why is this so popular, especially with young people? It can't just be the flavors.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the flavors are definitely part of it, but the nicotine itself is really a powerful stimulant, and it's got a range of effects.
Like what?
Well, it can help you focus better, it can help with memory, it can even help with endurance,
Oh, wow.
and it can reduce stress, elevate your mood, and even suppress your appetite.
So it's like a productivity enhancer and a mood booster and a diet pill all in one.
Pretty much.
No wonder people get hooked on this stuff.
Yeah, especially when they're stressed or looking for a quick fix.
Okay, and then I guess the other piece is it's more socially acceptable than smoking.
Yeah, absolutely. No smoky smell, no burning tobacco, just, plumes of whatever flavor you like.
So it's smoking's cool cousin.
Hmm.
But the article, Vaping is Too Good to Be True, hints that there's, another side to this,
Signally.
that it's not all it's cracked up to be. So what are we missing here? What are the risks?
Well, even though vaping does avoid the harmful tar and all the other stuff that comes with burning tobacco, it does come with its own set of risks. And the thing is, it's still relatively new.
Right.
So all of the long-term studies are still underway, and we don't really have all the answers yet.
So a lot of unknowns, which is never good.
Right.
But let's unpack what we do know. What does the article tell us about the potential risks?
Well, let's start with the aerosol itself. Remember those chemicals we talked about, propylene glycol, glycerol?
Yeah.
Well, inhaling them deep into your lungs, that's completely different from eating them.
Okay, how so?
Well, your digestive system can break down and process them, but your lungs, not so much.
Ah, I see.
When you inhale them, they can become irritants to the delicate tissues in your respiratory system.
So even if something's safe to eat, doesn't mean it's safe to inhale. Kind of like, I don't know, swallowing a bunch of salt water versus inhaling it, right?
Exactly.
One is unpleasant, the other you're choking.
Exactly. Your body processes things differently depending on how they get in. And beyond those, the aerosol also contains some other potentially harmful chemicals like cinnamaldehyde, benzaldehyde,
Oh, yeah.
and even formaldehyde and acrolein, especially when the liquid gets overheated.
Wait, formaldehyde, isn't it the stuff they used to preserve like specimens in labs?
Yep, that's the one. And that is definitely not something you want in your lungs.
Wow, okay. So we got potentially irritating chemicals, harmful byproducts from overheating, and is that it?
Well, there's also the possibility of inhaling metal particles from the heating coil.
Like what?
Things like nickel and lead.
Metal particles.
That's right.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So that's floating around in that vapor too.
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so we got the aerosol itself, which sounds like a mixed bag of, potentially bad stuff. And we don't even know about the long-term effects yet.
Yeah, that's a big concern.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, your lungs, they're just not designed to handle a constant bombardment of all these foreign particles, no matter how tiny they are.
Yeah.
Over time, that can lead to inflammation and even tissue damage.
Like breathing in dust all day, every day for years.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
we just don't know what inhaling those particles regularly will do to our lungs in 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, that is the scary part.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the aerosol,
Yeah.
we've got the long-term effects question mark, and then we've got nicotine.
Right.
Like the big elephant in the room here.
Yep.
The article really focuses on how addictive it is, especially for young people.
Rightfully so. Nicotine's a really potent drug, and its effect on the developing adolescent brain is a major concern.
In what way?
Well, we could be talking about problems with learning and thinking, increased impulsivity, higher risk of mood disorders, issues that can last a lifetime.
So it's not just getting addicted to a substance, it's actually changing how their brains develop.
Yeah.
That's pretty terrifying.
And the statistics are really worrisome. The article points out 20% of children in the UK have tried vaping. And in the US, 8% of students are regular vapers, and 1 in 4 of those use it daily.
Wow, those are huge numbers.
Yeah, so it seems like vaping might be becoming a gateway to nicotine addiction for a whole new generation.
That's incredibly alarming, especially given how unregulated this industry is. I mean, there are all sorts of chemicals that can end up in these products without us knowing how they'll affect us when we inhale them.
You're absolutely right, and that's a huge problem. It's kind of a perfect storm for potential harm, especially with how attractive vaping is to young people.
It feels like we're in a real crossroads here.
It does, doesn't it?
Vaping could be a harm reduction tool for some people, but it also has the potential to hook a whole new generation on nicotine. How do we even begin to deal with that?
That's the million-dollar question. How do we balance the potential benefits for current smokers with those very real risks for young people?
It's a tough one, for sure. And it's something we'll have to explore further.
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation trying to find that right balance.
So where do we even start to, untangle all of this? What are policymakers, health organizations, what are they doing about all this?
Well, it's a constantly changing situation, and approaches are all over the place depending on where you are. Some countries are going with really strict regulations, like banning flavored vapes altogether or having really tight age restrictions,
Oh, okay.
while others are focusing more on education and awareness campaigns, talking about the potential dangers, but also acknowledging that it can be helpful for smokers who are trying to quit.
Sounds like a lot of trial and error, trying to find that sweet spot between public health and, individual choice.
It really is. And the industry itself isn't making it any easier.
How so?
I mean, it's constantly evolving with new products and new marketing all the time.
I see.
Regulators are basically playing catch up, constantly trying to keep up with all the latest trends and innovations.
It's like a tech arms race, but
Yeah.
with public health on the line.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So we've talked about the individual health risks, the unknowns of the long-term effects, and the public health challenges. But the article also touches on some of the broader societal implications of widespread vaping. What are some of those bigger picture concerns?
Well, one of the big worries is that it's renormalizing nicotine use, especially among young people. We spent decades trying to denormalize smoking with public health campaigns and everything. And now vaping comes along with these sleek devices and cool flavors, and it's all over social media. So there's a real risk of undoing all that progress.
It's like taking a giant step backward.
Yeah, it is. And then there are also the economic consequences to consider.
Oh, right.
The industry is booming right now, creating jobs, generating revenue.
Yeah.
But what if all this leads to higher healthcare costs down the line because we have a surge in lung disease or other health problems?
Yeah, wow.
All that economic benefit could get wiped out pretty quickly by the strain on healthcare systems and, people's lives.
Like a ticking time bomb, short-term gain, but potentially long-term pain.
Exactly. And then there are the social and cultural changes that come with normalizing vaping.
Like what?
I mean, it's often seen as a social activity with its own rituals, its own online communities, even competitions. And that creates the sense of belonging, especially for young people.
It's like a whole subculture around inhaling flavored vapor.
Yeah.
It is kind of fascinating, but also kind of unsettling.
Yeah, for sure. And it raises a lot of interesting questions about how this might affect our social norms, how we think about health and risk-taking. It's all uncharted territory, really hard to predict what the long-term consequences might be.
So on top of the health concerns, we have this economic uncertainty and potential social and cultural shifts.
Right.
It's like vaping is more than just a personal choice. It has these ripple effects that go way beyond the individual.
It absolutely does. And as it continues to evolve, we need to be having these open and honest conversations about its place in society.
Yeah.
Looking at the science, the ethics, the long-term consequences, not just for individuals, but for communities, for future generations.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach is needed. More research on those long-term health effects, stricter regulations to protect vulnerable populations, and just more informed public discussion to help us navigate all these ethical and societal dilemmas.
You got it. Vaping's not a black and white issue. It needs a nuanced and collaborative approach that brings together scientists, policymakers, health professionals, and the public.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the science to the risks to the public health challenges and the broader societal impacts. And before we wrap up, I think it's really important we talk about another aspect of all this, the environmental impact.
You're absolutely right. It's easy to get caught up in all the other debates and overlook the environmental footprint.
Exactly. And it seems like all those disposable vapes with the lithium batteries and everything, that's got to be a pretty big environmental cost, right?
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah, those disposable vapes, they seem like the poster child for, environmental problems.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, they kind of highlight all the environmental concerns around vaping.
In what way?
Well, they're designed to be used once and then thrown away.
Right.
So you inherently have a ton of waste. Plus, they've got lithium batteries, lots of plastic, and neither of those are very good for the environment.
Okay, so waste is one thing, but what makes those materials so bad, the lithium and the plastic?
Well, you got to think about where they come from.
Hmm.
Like mining lithium, that can be really damaging to ecosystems.
Oh, how so?
Well, it uses tons of water, and it can really contaminate the soil and the water.
Ah, I see.
And then plastic, of course, that comes from fossil fuels, so that adds to the whole carbon footprint.
So even before someone starts vaping, there's already this environmental impact just from creating the device.
Exactly. And then you got to think about what happens when they're done with it.
Right.
Millions of these things are ending up in landfills every year.
Yeah.
And the plastic takes hundreds of years to break down, and the batteries are really dangerous.
Mm.
If they're not recycled properly, they can leak all these harmful chemicals into the ground and the water.
And haven't we all seen those stories about the batteries causing fires in landfills?
Hmm.
It seems like there's just not enough awareness about how to get rid of these things properly.
No, there really isn't. So you've got this lurk of awareness, and then on top of that, there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
It's a real problem for the environment.
So vaping is often marketed as this cleaner alternative to smoking, but it seems like it has a pretty big environmental burden when you think about the whole life cycle of these products.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's not just about what we inhale, it's about all the resources that go into making it, all the waste that's generated along the way from, digging up those raw materials to manufacturing the device to finally throwing it away.
It all feels kind of overwhelming. So are there any solutions? Like, are there things being done to try to reduce this environmental impact, or are we just stuck with it?
Well, it's definitely a problem that needs attention, like right now, but there are things that we can do. The biggest thing is focusing on reducing waste.
Okay.
So that means promoting reusable devices, encouraging manufacturers to use better materials, and having better rules about how to recycle batteries.
So kind of shifting towards a more circular economy where things are designed to last longer and be repaired and recycled.
Exactly. It's about getting away from this throwaway culture and thinking about sustainability throughout the whole life of the product.
And I guess consumers have a role to play here too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, choosing reusable vapes, getting rid of batteries properly, supporting companies that care about the environment, all those things can make a difference.
It sounds like it needs everyone working together.
Hmm.
Manufacturers, consumers, and, policymakers and regulators to really steer the whole industry in a more sustainable direction.
You nailed it. It's definitely a group effort. It takes collaboration and a commitment from everyone involved.
Well, this deep dive has been really eye-opening. We started with the science behind vaping, then got into the health dilemma, talked about the broader impacts on society, and now the environmental consequences. It's clear that vaping is a lot more complicated than meets the eye.
It really is. And I think it shows just how interconnected these issues are.
Yeah.
Health, society, environment, you can't really separate them.
Yeah, that's a really powerful takeaway for everyone listening. Vaping, like so many things in our world, has these ripple effects that go way beyond just our individual choices. And it really makes you think about the products we use, the companies we support, and what all of that means for us and for the planet.
Absolutely. It's all about making informed decisions, having these open conversations, and pushing for solutions that are good for both people and the environment.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of vaping. We hope you learned something new and maybe even got a little food for thought. Remember, the more we understand about the complex things we're facing, the better prepared we are to make good choices for ourselves and for the world around us.